think you already did.
I was recording the transcript. I know it's like so many technical things. So, welcome everyone. My name is Reggie Costanzo, and I am the Education and Resource Manager here at Brain Northwest. Thank you for being a part of our programming today. I'm very grateful to be able to bring forward today a special opportunity. It's a class style we haven't done yet, and so this is really wonderful. So, we have with us today Atlas Assistance Dogs. Taking center stage the moment is Jennifer, and she is the board president and founder of Atlas Assistance Dogs. And with us today is a panel of some people who have taken opportunity with the wonderful, unique program that Atlas Assistance Dogs has created to support people and their companion animals to live like fuller and more engaged lives in community. And so I'm very, very grateful to be here. I will be just present and learning along with everyone. And thank you, all of you, for your time. I'm really grateful for this really special opportunity. So thanks again for being here and take it away.
All right, I'm going to share my screen. Can everybody see my screen?
Yes, it looks great.
Okay, great. All right. Well, hi, everybody. For those of you who joined our presentation about a month ago, I'm Jennifer with Atlas Assistance Dogs. We have two of our clients with us in person today, as well as one that couldn't be here, but that I've got some Zoom recordings of. Um, so last time we talked more about what service dogs were in general, how our programs work. We're going to give a quick recap of that, but otherwise, I'll refer you to go watch that recording to get more details. So, first off, about Atlas, we are a nonprofit. We work with people with disabilities to train their own dogs as service dogs. We also educate professional service dog trainers, focus on strengthening the human canine bond, and promote a more inclusive society. We really envision a world where anybody who could benefit from a service dog can have one, and even more importantly, where those people with disabilities and their dogs can really thrive and work well together. We are deeply committed to using only positive reinforcement training. We are deeply committed to working with each person as an individual and their dogs and making sure that all of their needs are met. So, just as a quick reminder to folks, because we'll be talking about this, of what is a service dog under the American with Disabilities Act. A service dog is a dog that's trained to perform at least one task to directly mitigate that person's disability. The dog needs to be well behaved in public settings. And under the ADA, disability is self defined. It is something that I, as an individual, feel significantly impacts my life day to day. Under the ADA, it is not about a medical diagnosis or definition. And so, given that, the service dog and their handler have access to most public spaces the public otherwise would, with a few exceptions. For example, religious institutions do not have to allow service dogs. Businesses do not have to change the fundamental nature. So, say a surgical suite does not have to allow a service dog. A construction site does not have to allow a service dog. But otherwise, the dog can be any breed or size. And actually, it's neat that people we're hearing from today have very different types of dogs. They can be trained by an organization, a specialized trainer, or the individual themselves. In our case, it's sort of a hybrid. We are an organization that supports the individual in training. And they can help people with a huge range of disability types and medical conditions. They are not required to have any identification, any proof of training. I know this is very confusing, very commonly not understood. We do provide our clients with vests and ID cards because it can make it easier to navigate because most people expect that. But it is important to know that's not required. And so if you see somebody out there with a dog working and they're not in a vest, that doesn't mean they're a fake service dog. It doesn't mean that person doesn't need that dog. It just means that they may be not working through an organization. They may have left their vest at home that day. Um, but that dog could still very much be a service dog working for them. So please give them that respect if they identify that way. So today, we're really going to look at how a service dog can help with traumatic brain injury. And just as the way TBI can manifest drastically differently for many people, so can the range of tasks that dogs can do. And this is naming just a handful of things they could do. So retrieving items. In many cases, if you have a TBI, things like bending over, looking down at the ground can be really disorienting. They can cause vertigo, they can cause headaches, they can cause people to pass out. That can be really dangerous. And so, retrieving items that are dropped, finding items by name, kind of not remembering where things are placed, easily losing things can often be part of that. So, having your dog able to do that can be huge. Depending on how it manifests in the body and what physical symptoms there are. That can be opening and closing doors and drawers, a lot of retrieving of different clothing items, helping with unzipping and zipping clothing on. Lots of mobility assistance from anything from kind of full on harness work where the dog is really providing a lot of support to just something that's pretty commonly helpful, just helping you orient in space. We call that proprioception. And so just if you easily stumble, easily fall, maybe the coordination in your feet isn't quite what it used to be. The dog can just really help ground you to where you are and keep you safe moving forward. Medication reminders. That's a biggie. Making sure that you're on track with, oh, did I take my medication? Did I not take my medication? Did I eat? Did I not eat? Hearing alert tasks. Beth, one of our clients who's here today, will talk about that. So dogs can alert you to anything from somebody calling your name to somebody showing up if you don't have peripheral vision as a result of your injury, or really important safety things like your fire alarm going off at home or your tea kettle going off on the stove. Lots of things they can do with hearing. A lot of medical alert and response tasks. Seizures are not an uncommon result of TBI. Molly, our other client and also director of operations and programs, who's here today, is going to talk about that. So both responding to different medical events such as a seizure, or alerting to those, getting help, and then a lot of grounding tasks, as well as a lot of pain related tasks and psychiatric support tasks. So these are just a few of the things our clients today are going to talk about, some of the ways their dogs help them. But there is such a huge range of what service dogs can do. So I encourage you to be curious. Feel free to reach out to us afterward at info@atlasdog.org. Go to our website, atlasdog.org, and consider kind of the many things a service dog could do for you. Um, we do have significant coverage in the Pacific Northwest to work with clients here with their dogs. So, with that, I want to introduce our clients today. So, and I'm going to go through and ask them some questions and ask them to introduce themselves. So, I'll stop sharing the screen in a minute and do that with each person. So, but today we have Beth and Harvey, because you aren't going to see the dogs on the screen necessarily. So I want you to see their dogs. So we have Beth and Harvey first. We have Molly and Reed in the middle. And then joining us virtually through a recording I did because she couldn't be here today are Allison and Charlie. Allison actually has a very long history with Brain Injury Alliance of Washington. She actually was the president of the board many years ago. So longtime friend with this organization. So I will come back to her video. I'm going to stop sharing my screen so that we can have everybody here see our lovely clients. So with that, let me grab the questions real quick. Um, but I'll go ahead and start with Molly. Why don't you please give a quick introduction of yourself? Let us know a little bit about your dog and how long he's worked with you as a service dog.
Jen. So I'm Molly. I'm also I'm a client with Atlas, but I also work at Atlas. I'm our director of operations and programs. And sorry, that was my dog hacking in the background. So my dog is Reed. He is 12 years old. So he's actually my retired service dog right now. And I'm currently also training a new guy, but going to talk mostly about Reed right now. He is a Labradoodle, and I've had him since he was 8 months old, so I guess about 11 years. Um, and he does mainly seizure alert and response tasks for me, as well as a variety of other things kind of related to brain injury and kind of related symptoms.
Thank you, Molly. Beth, can you please give a quick, brief introduction about yourself and your dog?
Yeah, my name is Beth Mantes, and my dog is Harvey. He is a Havanese. I have had him since he was about 8 weeks old, and I have been training with Atlas since he was able to be trained. I have my TBI involves hearing loss and proprioceptive impairment. And so Harvey is really helpful in tasks with regard to hearing. I travel a lot for the work that I do, and so I needed a dog who was small enough to fit into my car easily. I'm a little person. I'm not a little person. I mean, I'm 5 feet, but I needed a dog that wasn't bigger than I. And so he is just that right size. He can fit in an airplane. He can fit in a car easily. He travels to spaces. He's very um, amenable with other dogs and people, children especially, which was important to me. And he helps in so many ways with regard to my hearing impairment because I find it difficult to be in crowds or large spaces. And so he is great at helping me maneuver in those things and adding confidence to my being able to address those places and people. And so I think that's the
That's
question for that.
that's great. Yeah, and we'll go into that a little bit more too. Thank you. Um, so I'm going to switch back to Molly here for a minute. And Beth, I'll come back and ask you some of this. She already answered some of this question for you.
Sorry.
No, that's great. Molly, tell us, if you're willing, please share a little bit about the circumstances of your brain injury, kind of the symptoms that resulted, and how your dog helps you.
Okay, so um, I got my brain injury, I guess 12 years ago. I was in freshman in college, and got hit in the head with a beer can during a college party, which resulted in a brain injury, and developed a seizure disorder as a result. So things kind of changed overnight for me. And and I ended up, because of the seizures, I think about a year later, ended up having another concussion. So kind of as a result, beyond seizures, have a lot of brain fog, proprioception issues, dizziness, migraines, kind of that whole gambit of things. So my dog Reed can alert to my seizures about 10 minutes before a seizure will happen. And then during the seizure, he helps me, he stays with me, keeps me safe after the seizure, is really supportive in keeping me grounded, getting me moving again. I get very stuck after a seizure, so he will start nudging me and licking me and get me moving again. And then just does a lot of he's fairly large, so something that I didn't necessarily train, but that I realized over time was very helpful was just because of his size. Jen kind of mentioned that proprioception support, just because of having him with his size, that in itself is very helpful, just navigating my everyday. And when I'm standing in place and having him with me, I don't get as dizzy, versus when I'm just standing without him, I get a lot more dizzy. I need to kind of brace myself on something. Um, so those are just kind of some of the general things over time. We've kind of, I've trained more tasks. He'll do a lot of deep pressure, a lot of grounding. But those are some of the general things that he does.
Thank you. And Beth, kind of back to you, stepping back a little. I know you talked about hearing. If you'd be willing to share a bit about the circumstance of your brain injury and kind of the results from that, and then we'll dig in a little bit more about and please dig in a little bit more about the kind of hearing tasks he helps you with.
My brain injury happened in 2008, and I was a riding instructor, equestrian sports, and training horses at the time. And my brain injury happened as I got hit by a horse who was exiting a trailer really quickly, blown out of the trailer, and then I had a brainstem laceration. That was the beginning of that. And then some years later, as I was in my recovery, I had a sudden hearing loss from a broken cochlea. So my doctor at the time, I was just so disoriented because I wasn't actually a spring chicken. So my doctor at the time recommended that I get a service dog to help me because it was not only disorienting, but the vertigo situation that I had for an extended period of time left me really um, uh, physically and emotionally and mentally impaired with regard to accessing areas in my life that I'd been able to access before. So she said, maybe a service dog would really help you. So then I was able to begin thinking about that, and so that's where I ended up with my service dog. Is that
Sounds
what you're
great. And
saying?
maybe to talk just briefly about some of the other, you talked about hearing, but some of the tasks he does, especially with helping you in public.
Oh, so in public, what I ended up with, the big thing was I was in an airport and at a gate, crowded, and turned around and there was some man's belt buckle right here. And I had no clue that anyone was behind me or beside me at all. And very disturbing because, like I said, I'm a smaller person and a woman, and I travel quite a bit. And so, one of the things that Harvey does is when someone gets into like a 6 foot perimeter around me, he will alert me with his nose so that I will look and see. So, in stores or airports or walking or whatever, he lets me know when somebody is approaching me. Also, if someone calls my name and if it's anywhere on my right side where my hearing loss is, I don't often hear it. And so he will also target me to let me know that someone has called my name so that I can look around and see what's happening. Um, um, in that, he's just been invaluable. The other fun thing that he does is he finds my phone, which gets lost all the time. And or now he can pick up credit cards from the floor when if I drop them and I'm not feeling well and get dizzy or have any of those things going on, he can grab the credit card from the floor, which is phenomenal. Or lots of things. He'll retrieve things for me. So in those ways, he's been invaluable.
Thank you. Thanks for sharing that. I'm going to go ahead and play a little clip from Allison while we're talking about kind of the history and what dogs can do. And then we're going to come back and have more questions for our clients here. So let me go ahead and share my screen again. And I'm going to make sure that I have sound sharing properly. All right. So this is about 4 minutes long. I cut down about a 30-minute conversation with Allison, and she's really sorry she couldn't be here today.
I'm Allison
Can you hear
Molnar,
this?
and I've had Charlie for, I guess, 11 years. And I was able to start training him since he was 7 weeks old. And he's been with me the whole time. And he is a Australian Labradoodle. My injury happened about 14 years ago. I had a really bad accident at my house. I was pulled out of the front door by a very large dog that we had at the same time. And it was in the middle of the night, but he had done a natural reaction of a wild animal that was in our yard. And he just took off. That was what dogs do. And he did it. And I was holding on to the end of a very long leash. That resulted in me flying through the air and I landed on my head and then landed in Harborview Hospital. That started the journey of my TBI, which kept me out of work for about 4 months. And then they gave me a couple of years for recovery. While I was recovering, I was at home with my dogs. I had a Bichon at the time and a golden retriever. And I was doing okay at home. That seemed to be, I was ready to go back to work. I was anxious. But then once I went back to work, I started to see symptoms of not being able to remember things. I could count to four or remember the numbers 1, 2, 3, 4. If it was a phone number, and then if it was more than four, my brain would just short out and not be able to remember it. So even simple things at the office were difficult, and I would hide it. Charlie was trained to help me deal with the pain episodes I was having at the time. I wanted to be on a board, and I wanted him underneath the table helping me deal with pain. So we devised some ways of him leaning into me, kissing, doing signals to distract me, to help me lower my blood pressure, to help me just kind of get through that initial shock of pain so I could stay where I was and not have to take a major painkiller. And I could drive, and it allowed me to get around and to do normal activities. Because if I didn't have a way of identifying the pain and calming it down, the doctors were prescribing Percocet, Vicodin, very heavy drugs that I hate. I didn't like at all. The bonus came along when I found out that Charlie could recognize when I was going to get a headache. And that was something that Jen and I didn't really know was going to be available. So I started to respond, and I would get up, take some medicine, go out, change my position, do something that would mitigate my migraine. I was getting migraines every day, every day. Now I get Botox shots every 3 months, and I have Charlie, and I take CBD. That works for me. May not work for other people, but it works for me. And I pretty much operate without worry about a major migraine.
So I'm going to stop sharing there. So they said she really wishes she could be here. That board she was talking about wanting to be on was the Brain Injury Alliance board. So with that, I'm going to go back to our lovely clients that are here. Now that we've talked a little bit about and heard from them, and there'll be opportunity to ask questions about some of the different things dogs can do and kind of the natures of their injuries, I want to ask you a bit more about training your dogs. So first off, I'm going to go to you, Molly. And then first, you talked a little bit about how you got your dog. But maybe say a little bit about how you got and trained your dog and any challenges you had in getting or training him.
Yeah, so when I was first looking into getting a service dog, I was initially looking at, are there any organizations out there that will, the kind of the more the traditional route of organizations that train dogs for people and, provide fully trained dogs. I had never owned a dog before. I was not really a dog person. I grew up with cats. Um, I didn't really know that training your own dog was even an option. So I was kind of looking I only knew the kind of more traditional route. And at the time I was having, multiple seizures a day and was back living with my parents. So the situation seemed very dire, and I kind of wanted a service dog fast, and soon. Unfortunately, there really weren't any organizations out there where I fit their criteria. There were a lot of boxes to tick, whether it was the location you had to be in, the specific diagnosis you had to have, the age requirement. There are organizations out there that provide seizure response dogs for children, but I was an adult. So it was very difficult I just didn't meet any criteria. I ended up being very lucky that I found a trainer in my area that was connected with another organization that partially trained dogs. So I kind of did this weird in between model where I was able to get a dog that had been partially trained in a prison program from a nonprofit. So that was Reed, and he was 8 months old at the time. And then I continued training with the private trainer to really make him my service dog. He had that kind of foundational training, all his kind of obedience tasks. And then I really now had to work with my trainer to do all of the public access skills, make sure that he knew how to work with me and my seizures. Kind of very similar to what Allison just said. Also, he then eventually on his own started to alert to my seizures. That was not something that we specifically initially were going to train for, but that he started doing that on his own. And so then we kind of narrowed down on that and reinforced that alert. Um, so yeah, the kind of challenges and getting the dog was just finding the right route for me. And then even working with a trainer, it's worth mentioning it's expensive. I wouldn't have been able to do it if I hadn't had a lot of family and friend support. I ended up, setting up a GoFundMe, um, which at the time was kind of a more novel thing to do, compared to nowadays where a lot of people are doing that. So I feel like if it was something that I was doing today, I may not have had the luck that I had and the generosity that I had. So just a lot of things went right for me, and I was very, very lucky and very grateful for the support that I had. Um, so yeah.
Thank you. So Beth, I know you talked about having Charlie or Harvey from the beginning, but how about a bit more about how you found him and trained him and challenges you faced in training him?
Well, I got Harvey, and my intent was to have a service dog, but I found that as I was looking for a service dog, I couldn't find something I could afford because I couldn't work at the time. And I guess I was just trying to find something that I could kind of certify as a service dog, but then I got Harvey and I started looking into that, and there are a lot of services out there, like online, that really don't do anything for you. They just kind of send you a vest and there you go. But that was not what I needed. It was not what I wanted. I really wanted a dog that would be able to help me. And so part of the problem with having a brain injury is too kind of pushing yourself through the nuances of searching and finding what you need because your brain isn't doing the things that it used to do. I, at one time, had been an accountant, a tax accountant, and that was kind of like out of my reach. Searching online was just tough. And then trying to figure out what to do with my dog was tough. So when I got him as a puppy, I found my best friend is a positive reinforcement horse trainer. And she said, when you train your dog, really, you just want to use positive reinforcement. So I did find somebody in my area who was a student of Karen Pryor. And so she came to my house and she worked with me on some of the initial training for Harvey. And she suggested that I look for someone to help me train him for specific tests. And so as I got online, I actually stumbled onto Atlas, which was wonderful. And the concept just really struck my heart. You know, people who need a service dog should be entitled to have one and should be able to have one, not entitled, let's not say that, but should be able to have one. And so I got in touch with Atlas, and Jen actually came to my home for an interview, and she set the course for me. So bless her heart, you know, that she was able to come and sit with me and Harvey and decide whether or not he was an appropriate dog for my needs. And so we went through all of that. And without that, I could not have moved forward in this training because I really, you know, I was told I should get a service dog, but then when you go out and try to look for a service dog, I found one organization that uses prong collars on their dogs. You know, like, what am I going to do? Kind of thing. So I'm eternally grateful for them having an online presence, having the mission statement that they do, having her come to my house and help me direct that training. And I think by the time Harvey was, it was a year and a half when we started, and I had that foundation of some positive reinforcement training. So we were able to move forward, and she helped me outline what kinds of things I needed him to do, like even discerning with a brain injury, things aren't linear. You know, it's hard to get from point A to point B sometimes. And so helping me understand that really what I needed was a dog to help alert me when people were in my dead zone, if you will, my proprioceptively and hearing dead zone. So she helped me with that. And then we were able to fineline the tasks that I needed him to do, like a knock on the door. I wouldn't hear a knock on the door, so he's, you know, able to do that, but in a better way. Like he doesn't just bark at the door; he'll come and get me. Let's go to the door, which is great, you know. But those were things that I didn't really know I needed, but found later that surely I did. So I hope I answered the question.
Yeah, no, thank you. And I
Okay.
should note that Beth's training also started just before COVID. So we also had the fun of navigating COVID together, figuring out some virtual training and some technology together. And so that was also a challenge that we got to navigate. Um, thanks for sharing all that, Beth.
I do want to add this. With a brain injury, what was a big wide world, it just narrows. It just becomes so enclosed because you just don't navigate the way that you used to. I'm sorry, I have a hoarse voice, but you don't navigate things the way that you used to, and your confidence isn't the same as it was. So, you know, a lot of things in my life had to change. And then with COVID and, you know, the restrictions there, I had to like really, we did a lot of virtual training. I had to become friends with my neighbor, which has been great because she's become a really good friend. But all those things were helped by Atlas and Harvey and Jen.
So Molly, I'm going to jump back to you and ask, what surprised you about having a service dog?
I think there were positives and negatives on some of the challenges that I wasn't expecting was the public attention that you get. Um, I think especially looking the way I do, people don't see a disability. They don't see anything wrong with me. Unless I'm having a seizure, then it's a little bit more obvious. But so there were and still are always a lot of questions from the public of why do you have a service dog? What's that dog for? Who are you training the dog for? It's and I mean this is something that pretty much every service dog handler reports that you're out navigating the world and get questions. Um, so I've learned to be a pretty good advocate for myself and for my dog when out and about. I did not realize the amount of people that go around trying to pet dogs every single day without permission. So you learn to be a really good advocate for yourself and for your dog. Um, I didn't realize the amount of public and this doesn't, it kind of depends on where you are in circumstances, but you get public access issues as well. People don't want to let you into spaces where you are legally allowed to go in with your dog. So again, you learn to become a very good advocate for yourself, and you learn the laws. And this is, well, ultimately one of the ways that I, wanted to join Atlas and work with Atlas, because I became very involved in disability advocacy work throughout college, and wanted to do more within the service dog community. And that's kind of another thing that I didn't realize, the community aspect. When you get a service dog, you're not just getting a service dog, you're really joining a community. Um, and that's and this that's a really special community, of supportive people who really do their best to support each other and understand each other, and have service dog handlers don't always have the same types of disabilities, but they have they have a service dog, and that's what ties us together. Um, and that's really cool and special. And again, that's one of the things that led me to Atlas. And yeah, I didn't think I would be joining a whole new community.
Thank you. Thanks for describing that. Beth, I'm going to ask you the same question. What surprised you about having a service dog?
Well, I think one of the key things for me is having a brain injury and having to train my own dog was a little more challenging than I expected. I had also, been in the business of training horses for many, many years and had dogs forever, but never really had to train them for specific tasks. They were just our dogs. And so training my dog to do a specific task was challenging because my thinking wasn't linear for sure. I had a lot of brain fog. I had confusion. I had lapses of thought. Um, and also having expected that training the dog would be a lot like training the horses, I think a lot of us have been taught to relate to our animals until recent years in more of an aversive method where we just yell no or we do whatever we do, drag them, whatever. And positive reinforcement isn't like that at all. So not only was I learning a new task, it was very much a surprise to me. I was learning this new task, but I was learning on this very small creature, and it wasn't aversive, it was all positive, and yet my brain wasn't completely functioning as well as it might have in years past. So it was challenging, and I have come to really respect people who suddenly end up in a wheelchair that need a dog, that then need to train the dog to serve them in their new environment. It's challenging, and I have said on many occasions that I so respect Atlas and their trainers and the patience that it takes to help people navigate through these new areas of learning. Because not only do you have to learn to deal with whatever you have going on, and in my case, it's just hearing and vocalizing sometimes, but it's teaching your dog to help you in that arena. And the grace is dogs tend to be able to understand quickly what their duties are, and they accept them, and they really love being with us and doing their job. Like Harvey, if I have a bad day and I have to just be quiet for the day, I can't believe how normally, dogs are like, well, I have to go out, I have to eat, I have to do this, I want to play, but he'll just be quiet. I have found myself in an ER a couple of times, and he has just been there. Didn't have to go potty for 12 hours, didn't demand anything, just hung there for 12 hours with me because I just needed it. So I think that all those things are very surprising to me. Wonderful. difficult, challenging, but they were all kind of new. Um, so that's what I have to say about that.
Thank you. I'm going to ask one more question, kind of have you both keep it a little brief so that way we can open up to everybody else. And that's just what would you advise someone who's thinking about getting or training a service dog? Molly, let's start with you.
Yeah, I'm gonna say, especially if you're thinking about training your own service dog, and if you don't have a dog already, spend time researching and thinking about what type of dog would be the best to suit your needs. And spend time, you know, don't just go and get a dog. Not every dog is suited for service work. And you can spend a lot of time and effort investing in all this training, and then it turns out the dog is not suited for service work. So work with a trainer to do temperament testing or learn about the right temperament for service work, and select a dog appropriately, um, because that is set yourself up for the best possibility of success, because it can be very devastating for people who spend a lot of time putting all this effort into a dog, and then the dog just doesn't have the right temperament for service work. Um, so that's just a hard reality, and I want to put it out there.
Thank you. Beth, what would you add in terms of advice for someone thinking about getting or training a service dog?
I would have to echo very much what Molly said. I actually saw that happen to a person who had gotten a dog and, after a long time, had to had to invest in a different dog because it was just temperamentally not suited. The other thing I would say is to just be patient with yourself. Um, it's it's it isn't cut and dried. It isn't a quick road. It is a lifelong training experience. It doesn't end once you teach them. You have to keep up on the training. So you can't just assume that they will do it forever. I mean, they will, but you have to keep up on the training. And the challenge also is in certifying. It's challenging going for the testing, and so you just have to really be patient with yourself.
Thank you. That's a really good point. So, I really appreciate everything both of you have shared. I want at this point to open it up to the audience of if there are questions people have. If they're super, super specific about you, it may make more sense to have you go ahead and email info@atlasdog. But otherwise, let's go ahead and open up to questions from anybody here.
I wanted to jump in first and just thank both of you, Beth and Molly, for your honesty and your willingness to share so many details about your experience, about your injury, and your just lived guidance on what would be beneficial for others to consider. And it's just really hearing story is a very powerful way to increase education understanding. So thank you. Thank you so much. Um, Great, thank you. So Jennifer has put into the chat for those who want to take a peek, just the Atlas Assistance Dog website and the info, which is great information to have. So, but please, if someone has, I'm not able to see everyone on the screen at the same time. So if you have a question or a comment, please feel free to take yourself off mute and ask, or you can put it in the chat and I can be your voice for you.
If people don't have questions, I can invent questions for our panel.
Right. I'm keeping myself because I'm always filled with questions. I'm such a curious person.
Well, why
I
don't you
guess.
start then?
Okay, okay. So I really appreciated your point, Beth, that you just mentioned, just being patient with yourself in the process of training. And then also, Molly, you describing just the value of really getting to doing some research around temperament of dog, and I'm thinking about both of you having different size dogs, and that for each of you, like that is something that the size of dog that you each have is really valuable to each of you as individuals. And so that I think is just helpful to have as an example. I'm curious if there are any breeds or combinations of breeds that tend to be more receptive or tend to have a higher success rate in terms of temperament for training. I mean, this is for any one of you to answer.
Sure, I'll start an answer there and then let the others jump in. And really, like you see a lot of Labradors and Golden Retrievers and Standard Poodles. And there's a reason for that. That they're dogs that are working lines, they're food motivated, they typically are social and friendly with other people and other dogs. They like to please. They're fairly easy to train. So you see a lot of those dogs for a reason. Um, you don't see as many like Havanese. However, like Harvey is a delightful, bright dog to work with. And I think recognizing having a smaller dog and the doors that can open for you if you don't need the size. And you will definitely see you will see some doodles more and more in Labradoodles. Molly's dog Reed is a first generation Labradoodle. He doesn't look like a curly Labradoodle. He looks like a small wolfhound. So she gets lots of questions about that. But there are lots of doodle cross mixes out there now that are super popular. Molly or Beth, is there anything you want to add to that?
I did want to touch on the size thing, and I was planning on talking about this, and I apologize. I'm a little brain foggy today. But because the I've been having an interesting kind of thing going on with the size as I'm training a new dog who is smaller than Reed. Um, and when I first got Reed, I was not thinking about size at all. It's not something I realized I really needed. It was kind of over time I actually realized how beneficial that was. And actually, as he's retired, I really realized how beneficial his size was. So it was kind of more the absence of him made me realize how much that size was important to me. The new dog I'm training is a lab. He's a little smaller than what I would ideally like, but temperament-wise, he's exactly what is needed. And it's kind of hard to find that perfect temperament out there. And it was a big challenge for me finding a successor dog. So now I've kind of been playing this game of, okay, how am I working with the size? How can I make that size work for me? What can I add into his training to what other tasks can I add on to make the size work? Because his temperament is so perfect.
I
Um,
appreciate you mentioning that. And just, I'm aware that you have come to know yourself in a way that is able to inform more like, okay, this is what I need, but how can I make it work? Like I'm hearing
mhm.
that through the support of having Reed's presence in your life, you've come to a deeper understanding too of like how to I'm just appreciating the flexibility that maybe having that kind of self-awareness through his experience has given you, and that's a beautiful like side effect of that relationship.
Yeah.
So yeah, I appreciate that very much. Yeah, thank you.
Beth,
I add
anything you want to
something?
add?
Yeah. I'd like to say that my hearing injury, my deafness injury, is a vestibular injury. And so I have noticed that Harvey is a small dog and he is not a stability dog. And as time has gone on, none of us are getting younger. And I wonder as time goes on, if Harvey's 8 now, could live a very long time, but at some point, will I need a stability dog? Which he is definitely not. If I fell over on him, he'd definitely be squished. So there's that to consider as well. What your needs are now. He definitely fit my needs for sure, and still does. But as time goes on, I've noticed that, you know, vestibular issues might be an issue. So I would encourage people to think about not just the present, but there's a time situation with your injury that can change things.
That's a really good point. And I think the other things to think about with time are also lifespan of the dog.
Mhm.
The bigger breed dogs don't live as long. How old is the dog when you get them to start training? Um, really making sure that that it's fair to ask the dog to do that training at that point, and then are you going to get enough working years out of that it's fair to ask the dog and yourself to do it. I think another important thing to think about when you're picking dog is how much attention are they going to draw to you? One of the pictures we had was of a Samoyed. That dog is striking, unusual. She draws a lot of attention. We've had clients like with the blue burl collies. Like, so things that like be aware of if you have a really striking dog, you may get more attention. And also be aware if you have a dog that has stigma against them, like pit bulls, Rottweilers, some of those dogs, even though they can be phenomenal service dogs, be aware of other barriers you may be adding that you have to navigate. Um, I do see a couple of questions.
Can I
Um,
say something really quickly before you go to those questions? Because I appreciate that you mentioned that. You talked about that in the prior class, but it also just points to what you were sharing, Molly, which I'm grateful for you sharing. It's just the amount of attention and lack of acknowledgement or just awareness about hidden disabilities that are often experienced for people living with brain injury. And I'm grateful for the community you mentioned in other folks who have service dogs or animals, that it's helpful to have a community to be able to talk those things out with. But I thank you for the education on that. Yeah. So yes, yeah, check the chat. It's a bit busy,
okay.
which is great.
That's great. Yeah. No, and thank you for just like I said, you can always follow up with us. I put our main email and our website information. We have a lot of resources on the website. So one person asked, how long is the process of training? The answer is it depends. Most dogs need to be at least two to really be mature enough to be kind of fully certified and working as a service dog. You will start receiving benefit from them much younger.
And
Um,
I would, sorry, go for it.
And I was going to say, depending on the task, though, if you're doing anything that's load bearing or that's going to impact their skeletal system, you don't even want to start any of that kind of work with them until after they're two and their body's really developed. So it really depends on the dog and the person and how much time you can put into the training, what the dog is at, the support you have. It could be, in our program, it's a 9-month minimum program. We start with dogs who are at least 14 months of age, but it could be for you if you're not going through that program. It could be months, it could be years. It's really individual. Molly, what were you gonna?
I was gonna say, I think the reality for most owner trainers, for most people who are training their own dog, even if they're starting with a puppy, is probably to expect that it's going to be more than 2 years, probably closer to 3. I think we kind of have like the industry tends to say 2 years because that's what we see with organizations that train the dogs for people. But for most owner trainers who are dealing with their disabilities and with their everyday life, um, it's we tend to see really that it's more than 2 years.
And that's what's starting from. That's a really good point, Molly. Um, and is there a cost? It depends on the approach you take. With Atlas, we charge $900 total, and that's spread out in different payments over the 9 months that you are going through our program, and that covers your application, the 9 months of one-on-one private training, your initial certification fee, and we have scholarships if that's not affordable for people. If you're hiring a private trainer, if you're purchasing a dog, you're working with a foundation that could be thousands of dollars, tens of thousands of dollars. The price really varies depending on the approach you take. Um, and so that's part of why we try to keep our costs so low, is because, yeah, most people that are living with disability, maybe out of work, maybe on a fixed income, we don't necessarily have money just sort of rolling in. So that's part of why we do what we do with our program, um, is to keep it affordable and accessible. One person asked, what are the challenges of training an older dog already established in your life? Um, I'll put a little here and then let Molly maybe jump into this too. So in many cases, the owner trainer, one of the neat things about training your own dog is you've realized, and I think one of you mentioned this, that your dog has kind of started picking up on your needs on their own. They're recognizing when you might have a particular medical episode. They're starting to just sort of do that on their own, and you now want to go and refine that and make it reliable. That's a really common story for owner trainers. And so it's looking at the rest of the dog. Are they, maybe they're great at home doing this, but when you're starting with an older dog who may not have had that same foundational training, how does that dog feel about being out in public? How do they feel about other dogs, other people, the demands of that change in lifestyle? And really looking deeply and saying, is that fair to ask that dog? And that can be really tough because you have this dog, you love this dog, and they're doing a phenomenal job helping your needs at home. But they may really be struggling and stressed out in public. And it's not fair to ask the dog to just suck it up and tolerate. The dog needs to be thriving and happy. And so, really looking at maybe the dog can help you at home,
Mm.
but it's not appropriate as a public access service dog. So those are some of the things I would warn. And then thinking about just lifespan and age and kind of if your dog has been, eating from the table with you their whole life and suddenly you're now going to take them to the restaurant and change the rules on them. Just sort of some of the things to think about depending on the pattern you've established with the dog. Molly, I don't know what else you want to add
Yeah,
to
you've
that.
touched on everything I would have said. Um,
And Beth, I don't know if there's anything you want to add.
Well, I would agree.
So it's common and it's lovely. And like I said, it's one of the things about owner training that's so powerful is that you have this dog you have a bond with. And it's really common for medical alerts that the dogs are detecting them on our own. Scientifically, we don't fully understand yet what most dogs are picking up on. Data is showing it's scent based more and more, but we don't have a lot of the research or science to back it. We don't have the data yet for exactly how to train that. So taking that and shaping that alert and turning it into something reliable is really powerful. It's what Molly described her process was, and Allison as well. So I would definitely look at that, but just look at your dog in the bigger picture of public access.
On that note, if someone was wanting to explore or get like Atlas Dog's take on, hey, do you think my dog could be a good a good viable candidate? Is that something that people could contact you and explore? Like, is that something that people could get an assessment or get some eyes on their dog and get feedback about that?
yeah, so our process is so as long as the dog isn't over 8 years old, because that is our cutoff. Um, but we have kind of an initial application, and there's some paperwork involved, and as well as some video recordings first, and an intake call with me that's done. And once kind of all of those steps are through, and through that paperwork, we look for any potential red flags or things that might tell us, we don't think this dog is appropriate for service work. But assuming all of all of that paperwork goes through, when the intake call goes through, then we do an in-person assessment with the dog. And so that's kind of the last step for acceptance into the program.
Thank you for that. Well, we are at the hour, and I am going to ask anyone who has any further questions to really utilize the wonderful resource here of info@atlasdogs.org, and also to check out the website. I am very grateful again for each of you, Beth and Molly, sharing your stories, and for Jennifer and your guidance and insight, and just the questions that you asked Beth and Molly and Allison as well. So thank you for all of your editing for her video because it was really helpful. But this has just been really a rich experience and also really validating for the community. I was moved by both of you, Beth and Molly and Allison as well, that your dogs naturally were attuning to you and some of your needs and ended up kind of rising to the task in ways that you didn't expect. And that just brings in a spirit of hope that is really beautiful to hear. So thank you so much for being here today. This has been really tremendous. Thank you all who asked questions. And again, I will be mailing out slides, and this recording will be posted on our website to revisit and to share it with others. This is really fabulous information for people to know, and also to be aware of all the nuances that are part of inviting an animal to be in companionship with an individual in this way. It's unique and special. So thank you all so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you
Appreciate
for
you.
having
Have a
us.
beautiful day.
You
You
too.
too.
Thank you.
Bye.
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 Bye.